Welcome to VNN. We have a very special guest today. Melissa Lantsman is the Conservative Shadow Minister of Transport and Member of Parliament from the Thornhill constituency. She is a Vice Chair of the Standing Committee and Subcommittees on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, and member of the Canada-Israel Parliamentary Group. She was also Director of Communications in one of our most popular Prime Minister, Stephen Harper's office. Welcome to VNN, MP Lantsman.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how was the Calgary Stampede?
The Calgary Stampede was a great reunion in a time that is back to normal for our friends in Alberta. It's busy, it's a lot of fun, and there was a lot of good work done in our movement there over a couple days. But I'm glad to be back in Thornhill.
I think there's a good conservative wave in Calgary and Alberta, isn't it?
There certainly is, and you know it's home to a large part of our membership, and really I can understand why there's so much anger there, just being left out of the federation, having a government tell you can't develop your resources, and having so much potential in that province that is untapped. So our conservative base is ready for a change in Canada, and we've got to make sure that the GTA follows.
I know. I saw some of the tweets of the Pierre, I think, and Pierre and Jasraj. They were also there for the Stampede, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'll always go flip pancakes for my seatmate, Jazz, any day of the week. And he had over 1,000 people come to his breakfast, and he's a popular guy in Calgary.
To know about this now transport mess, the airport mess that's happening all over Canada and Pearson, of course. Why do you think the government is still keeping this ArriveCan app? What's the idea behind it?
First and foremost, we've got to talk about the ArriveCan app, why it doesn't work. It's not making travel easier. It's not making it more efficient. It's not helping our operational security. And it's tough. It's tough for anybody who maybe doesn't have a smartphone. It's tough for anybody who maybe doesn't speak French or English as their first language and maybe can't use the app. This thing is clunky. It's confusing, and it needs to go. And why I think the government is keeping it? Well, that's the question, because everybody. Airports, airlines, the tourism industry, our border mayors, MPs in border towns have all said that it needs to go. So who knows why they're clinging to this, other than continuing on their narrative, where I think COVID is the #1 issue, and for a lot of Canadians, it is not the #1 issue anymore.
I mean, is this the reason for the mess at Pearson Airport and all the other problems that travelers are facing?
I think it's one of the reasons. So with ArriveCan, it's taken somebody who usually takes about 30 seconds with a border agent, it's taken that up to 2 to 4 minutes. And a lot of our border agents are now acting as IT consultants because so many people are confused with the app. So it's one of the compounding reasons of long lineups and inefficiencies. Another reason is the workforce is not back. What the reason is not, though, the government itself said that it blamed travelers for being out of practice, and it's blaming everybody but themselves. And I think that there is a lot of problems at Pearson that were foreseeable and that should have been fixed long ago.
At the standing committee on transport, I mean, have you discussed what is the solution for this thing?
Yeah, we actually had a bit of an airport study that got derailed, and I think there is bigger issues around how our airports are constructed in terms of their makeup of who makes decisions. I think there is some things that we need to change in how they are funded, what they contribute to the economy, and how infrastructure is built there. But we didn't get to a lot of that. We focused on dropping those restrictions, dropping those mandates, which I've been calling for a long time. Bala, I got to tell you, if you're spending 2% of your life traveling, maybe total, and you spend 98% doing everything else, like going to the grocery store, going to a baseball game, interacting with your kids and their friends, And we have all of the restrictions right now in this country on 2% of your life. You've got to ask yourself what the incremental value of those restrictions are. And so the Transport Committee really looked at finding witnesses to tell us exactly what these restrictions were doing to our everyday basic services. And it's not just airports. It's passports. It's getting in touch with Revenue Canada. And of course, to many who are probably watching, there's an immigration backlog of almost 3 million. And that means you're not going to reunify with your family. And we don't have enough people in Canada to do everything that we need to do in order to grow our economy.
I mean, you recently met with airport executives, isn't it, to talk about these the challenges. I mean, what was discussed there?
Well, I've consistently been meeting in my transport critic role. I've been consistently meeting with airport, and just recently we had all of our major airports, including our small and regional airports, and they've all said that the problems were foreseeable. That the government ought to fix things like credentialing. It takes now, if you are a new hire at an airport, it takes up to 6 weeks to just get a badge to get into the airport, and that's there's not enough screeners. Our CBSA agents are working with people to fill out their ArriveCan. So there is a number of problems at the airports themselves. I also recently met with an airline executive. I met with the CEO of WestJet, and he expressed some trouble in terms of being able to service his customers or WestJet's customers in a way that we need to expect. And I think we hear from the government a lot that these problems are global problems. But if you look at every indicator, we are the worst, and that's never what we want to strive for.
I mean, have you spoken with both domestic and foreign airlines as well?
We have, and most of those troubles are at our big airports. Most of them concentrated right here in the GTA where I'm at Pearson. But we're having long lineups and delays in places like Calgary and Vancouver and Montreal. So it's not just Toronto. It's not just international flights. It's the entire airport operations. And of course, if you cannot check a bag, the only advice that I would give is don't check a bag, because you're likely not to get it on the other side. That's the unfortunate part.
I mean, now coming back to the passports thing, I mean, it's like a free camping site, isn't it? Outside passport.
Yeah, you bring your chair and you bring your tent, and that should have never happened. These are basic government services, and Bala, you and I pay taxes every single year to be able to expect that the government works and that the government cares about you getting basic services. And I realize that passports aren't the number one issues, but if you are trying to reunite with your family after 2 years, if you're trying to take your family on vacation after 2.5 years, you shouldn't have to wait in line at 3 a.m. for a passport. So we've made some constructive suggestions on bringing people back to work in person, about opening those offices for longer, about streamlining the process without necessarily all of that, red tape that they ask you, copy of this, a copy of that, an original birth certificate. Everybody has to go through these applications, and for the most part, if you have an unexpired passport, it should be a more streamlined process for you.
And is it staffing problems or?
It's certainly staffing problems, but look, if you ran a business and you had sort of pent-up demand, you would either, grow your staff complement, meaning hire more people, or you would open for longer. Right now, passport offices, they're closed Saturdays and Sundays when lots of people have the time to do that, and they're closed, after 4:30 p.m. and before 8 a.m., where lots of people aren't working. But there's so many people who can't afford to take a day off. I'm one of them. I don't have the time to wait in line for my passport. I'm glad that I don't have to renew it for another year. And I think if we had a conservative government that was that had people's best interest in mind, just the basic government services, we'd be in a much better place today.
What are these new rules about airline refunds, which are said to be very anti-passenger?
Yeah, look, I think that our passengers have rights in this country, and especially when you're spending large amounts of money and you're trying to reunite with your family and you're trying to get to where you're going and you're trying to do business. If an airline cancels on you, you should have have reasonable compensation. If you're stuck somewhere in Toronto and you live in Saskatchewan and you couldn't get a connecting flight, you should not have to be out of pocket for an extra night of hotel. So there needs to be sort of strengthened legislation around the rights of passengers, and we can't let airlines get away with blaming the chaos that the government has created for increased chaos in the airports. This has to be about the consumer. It has to be about everyday Canadians, and we have to do everything possible to make sure that people have the confidence in our system and have the confidence to fly with one of our big airlines and not be canceled.
So when you bring up these issues at the standing committee, I mean, what's the government saying?
Yeah, look, we're not met with much disagreement from the MPs on the government side. And the way that a committee works is that we put together a report and the government can act on it. And many of these things, are agencies like our Security Transportation Agency, CATSA, the guys who screen, or the CBSA saw coming. So we can write as many reports, but if the actual government, if the actual ministers don't act on it, well, then they're just reports. But we've had some, we've had, other than restrictions and blaming, blaming Canadians for the mess the government's created, many of the members of the committee agree on some of the fixes.
Yeah, I mean, okay, apart from this subcommittee on transport, I mean, you're also interested in infrastructure?
I am interested in infrastructure, and we have a government that has put all their eggs in something called the infrastructure bank, and it's hard to explain, but it's not a bank, and it hasn't built any infrastructure. So we want to see us return to a model where the private sector is actually involved in building infrastructure. We haven't had that much built in this country under this government's tenure, especially not like in 2008 when we had our economic action plan. We have an infrastructure deficit in this country. We need more. We've got a growing number of people in the GTA. We've got to help them get around, and luckily, in Ontario, Mr. Ford seems to be he seems to be building, and the Fed, well, not so much.
Yeah, Ford. They say rebuild Ontario. He's building. We can see that everywhere.
He's certainly building.
There are 2 new highways coming. Of course, it's being opposed by the Liberals here.
Absolutely, and it's the opposition to development, both in infrastructure and certainly in our oil pipelines, and getting good Canadian oil to around the world to customers. It is an ideological opposition, and there is only really one thing that's going to change that, and that has to be a change in government.
Does the NDP ever support you in Parliament on any
Very rarely. Unfortunately, they've got and they certainly don't support us on anything that would be a matter of confidence. As you know, and as some watching would know, that there is a confidence agreement, meaning the NDP has to agree with the Liberals on whatever on whatever they bring forward, no matter what the NDP gives. And it's really disappointing to see because the country can be so much better off if the NDP stood up for their values and what they believed in. Instead, they're just agreeing with the Liberals, and Canadians are worse off.
How was your work during Prime Minister Stephen Harper's time? It was must have been very interesting, isn't it?
It was a very interesting time to be part of government, to be part of building Canada, about having a good reputation on the world stage.
Yeah.
All of those things that have just disintegrated in the last 7 years. I didn't think it would happen so fast, but Bala, we do so little with so much in this country, and being a part of the Harper government, everything seemed to work. Now, we didn't make all of the right decisions. Otherwise, I think we'd still be there. But it was a time where Canada was well respected, and our economic growth was off the charts, and we had spending under control. So, fiscal restraint, people doing well, and a good reputation is exactly what a prime minister's legacy should be. And I was really proud to work on that.
When the Conservatives win, what portfolio would you like to handle?
You know what? I will be humbled, and I will do the good work of the soldier in whatever portfolio I get. You know, I think I've done well at holding the government to account on some of these transportation issues, and I look forward to implementing you know, some of the changes that we have thought about as a caucus or our colleagues, and really drive a government agenda forward in whatever way they ask me to.
Oh, this includes shipping also, isn't it? Global shipping.
Absolutely, it includes ports and rail, and luckily we've just averted a rail strike. But as inflation rises, as interest rates go up, we might see a little bit more of labor disruptions, and that's a problem. It's a problem for us getting our goods on time. It's a problem for us being competitive on the global stage, and it's a problem for the price of everything going up. So we certainly you know, we certainly hope that the government can rein in its spending, so we're not going through these constant economic shocks.
Have you visited India?
I have visited India. I actually visited India with the government, and I look forward to going as a politician. I think that first of all, our two countries share our values, our two communities, and I'm particularly, I represent a large Jewish community. We have a large South Asian community as well, not as big as some parts in this country, but I would love to work together even closer than our two communities are, and I would love to see Canada restore a proper relationship with India in the way that it should be.
Yeah, especially since the Indo-Pacific is becoming such an important area.
Absolutely, and we've been left out of some of the trade negotiations. I've always been a big proponent of open skies and direct flights, so our communities could be closer. And I look forward to an opportunity in government to make those things happen.
And India is booming. I mean, we should not restrict ourselves just to the export of pulses, and there's so many other things to happen, isn't it?
Absolutely, so much to learn and so much to share between our two countries that are natural allies.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, MP Lantsman.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time off. It's a busy schedule. I know you just came back from Calgary, isn't it?
Yeah, and back to work. People of Thornhill deserve leadership, and that's what I'm here to provide.
When does Parliament resume again?
September 19th, and I'm enjoying being in the community until that time, and then we've got to go back and continue to hold them to account.
But will it be sort of a hybrid Parliament again? I mean, that's
unfortunately we voted against hybrid. I'm not a fan of hybrid. I do not do hybrid. If Parliament is sitting, I am there. So that's the way that I see it. And unfortunately, we're gonna continue hybrid Parliament, which I think is a disservice to Canadians and a disservice to democracy.
Thank you, MP Lantsman. Nice talking to you. Very good.
Thank you so much.
I hope we'll meet again. And
absolutely.
Thank you.